Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Kate, I make videos about books and bookish things, and today I am coming to you with a video that has been almost 5 months in the making. I did not intend for it to take this long, however I filmed it in parts over the summer and then was like, I just need to film like a little sort of introductory and outro portion for this. Then I went to uni and I've been balls deep in second year ever since. It's been great fun. I've just been so incredibly busy, and for a change, not just with doing my course reading. So it's been a wonderful time, however my mind has not been on making YouTube videos. That is a lot of preamble to say that over this summer, I got a mystery book subscription for 3 months. This you'll remember if you saw my Christmas haul video that I made in early January, I think, in which I ran through all the books that I got for Christmas and all the bookish items that I received for Christmas. One of those things being a subscription to Rare Birds books that was gifted to me by my parents for my birthday, and I thought that the summer holidays would be the perfect time to gain 3 new books and have the chance to make sure I had them read before the start of my second year. Rare Birds Books is an Edinburgh-based bookshop that focuses specifically on books by women, and the way their subscription service works is that each month you are given 2 blurbs for Book A and Book B, and you just have to pick one of them based on the short blurb they give you, which is different to the book's actual blurb, so it is harder to work out what it is they're sending you, and then that book arrives in the post for you. They also have a little community feature so you can talk about the books, but yeah, that is enough preamble, I think. I will show you what it was like with me getting these 3 books and my experiences of them. I had a very exciting package arrive yesterday. I have my first Rare Bird Books delivery. I've obviously blotted out my address, but I needed to be able to show you this gorgeous packaging because, as you can see, it is all their like nice theme colours, which is so lovely. And then on the back it says great book inside, which I'm excited. Very, very excited to open this. Oh, let me get my laptop so I can tell you what the blurbs I had to choose between were. Book A said, in this fresh twist on the classic rom-com, 2 uptight and emotionally unavailable city slickers struggle to balance work, their familial duties, and their growing attraction to one another. If you can't get enough of the enemies to lovers trope, this one's for you. And then Book B said, Book B this month is a rock and roll ride back in time to the 70s, following the rise of an interracial musical duo. Perfect for fans of Daisy Jones and the Six or the songbook of Benny Lament. So I read both of those and went for Book A, the enemies to lovers twist on a rom-com story. My main decision for that was because the other book got compared to Daisy Jones and the Six, and after I did not get along so well with the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I thought I'd steer clear from the Taylor Jenkins Reid comparisons. I'll be honest, neither one particularly made me go, ooh, this is a book I'm really, really interested in. But one of the things I thought was interesting about Rare Bird Books was when I looked at their website, they have like an FAQ, and one of them was, how do you know which books I'll like? And their answer was just, we don't. You know, the idea being that you get out of your comfort zone, you trust them to pick you a good book, you get to pick based on the blurbs, but you generally just trust their ability to cherry pick things that are worth reading, which I thought was really, really good. And so, yeah, I decided to go for the one that was perhaps a little more out of my comfort zone. I don't read much romance fiction. I did get on very, very well with Get a Life Chloe Brown last year, and I'm not averse to trying more. It just wasn't the kind of thing that immediately makes me go, ooh, that's a book for me. But anyway, without further ado, I want to see what this is. Okay. Nicely wrapped up. It says read me. Ah! So there's a little card, and I've just flipped it over and it says, I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce this month's book club pick, Emily Henry's Book Lovers. Well, this is very interesting. I know of Emily Henry. I believe she's a very, very popular romance author. I think she wrote You and Me on Vacation or something like that, which is broadly known as a very, very good romance book. God, look at that wrapping paper. Is that not lovely? It obviously isn't sponsored or anything, but like, this is just broadly a very pleasant thing. And there we are, Emily Henry's Book Lovers. Right. Oh, and it's got a little Rare Birds book sticker on it as well. Right, let's read the official blurb for this then. Nora is a cutthroat literary agent at the top of her game. Her whole life is books. Charlie is an editor with a gift for creating bestsellers, and he's Nora's work nemesis. Nora has been through enough breakups to know she's the one men date before finding their happily ever after. To prevent another dating dud, Nora's sister persuades her to swap her city desk for a month's holiday in Sunshine Falls. It's a small town straight out of a romance novel, but instead of meeting sexy lumberjacks, handsome doctors, or cute bartenders, Nora keeps bumping into Charlie. She's no heroine, he's no hero, so can they take a page out of an entirely different book? This is interesting, not least because I had heard of Book Lovers, and I have to admit it was the Emily Henry book that I would have been interested in trying, being that it's quite a literary take on the romance novel. So yeah, fascinated to see how I get along with this. Welcome back. It is now the 9th of August, and I have read Book Lovers. I actually read it well over a week ago at this point. I did something very silly. I'm currently in my new university house, as I'm sure you can tell. I had planned to read Book Lovers on the train to come up to university. However, I don't like starting books on the train, and so the day before I'd sort of gone, oh, well, you know, I'll just read the first couple of chapters, get myself immersed in it so I can sit down and read it just fine on the train. And then promptly read the entire thing in about 2 sittings. So very much scuppered my plans in that regard. However, it did mean I read a second book on the train. I would like to talk about my feelings about it. Broadly, I would say that I enjoyed it. For me, it was like a high 3-star book, not quite a 4. So, Book Lovers. Now that I've read it, I can tell you a little bit more about it. Book Lovers is about Nora, a literary agent who has given up on dating, has been taken on holiday by her very much romance-loving sister Libby to go have a hot girl summer before Libby gives birth to her 3rd child. However, while she is there, she meets Charlie, who is a man she does not get along with, but who works in the same industry as her. Charlie is a literary editor, and they are both very, very cutthroat working people. They end up together in close proximity in this very, very small town, and it is about them falling in love and other shenanigans. Firstly, I have to say, the first 200 pages, I was really, really invested in it. Nora and Charlie's dynamic was so immediately engrossing with their snarky, I'm gonna pretend I dislike you sort of banter. It was just really, really endearing to me to see 2 characters who genuinely just treat each other like arseholes doing that over and over, which very refreshing. I also liked the overarching plots that ran alongside it, with Libby's reasons for taking her on holiday. Nora and Charlie end up having to edit a book together, specifically for an author whose books are set in the town that they are currently staying in. Nora and Libby also end up involved trying to save Charlie's family bookstore there. There's all kinds of other drama with the locals and things like that. I was broadly very, very interested in them. I thought it was a really, really endearing setting, and I liked the way it was taking a lot of very popular cliches around small town romance and just sort of throwing them all up in the air and going, right, let's see what happens. However, I did have quibbles, and from about the 200-page mark, I was not nearly as invested in it. Firstly, this has been marketed as enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers, and it just straight up isn't. Nora and Charlie's relationship, they clearly like each other, even from before they end up in Sunshine Falls when they are genuinely just work colleagues. They clearly both like and respect each other. They're not rivals, they're not competing for anything, and they're certainly not enemies. It's clearly a marketing thing. These are snarky acquaintances who like being mean to each other. Additionally, their snark with each other was one of the main reasons I liked their dynamic. It was so refreshing to see a bitchy woman meet a bitchy man and for them to just love that about each other. But as soon as they started getting romantically invested in each other, the snark disappeared. They became really sincere people. And I didn't enjoy it nearly as much. I liked the fact that they would rib each other constantly. I liked the fact they had inside jokes meant to upset or embarrass the other one. And it just completely disappeared, which meant their dynamic wasn't nearly as engaging for me from the point at which they were actually getting close to being in a relationship. I think this just goes in hand with their characterization generally starting to slip as we approach the 3rd act breakdown. The whole way through, we've been told that Nora and Charlie are both very, very dedicated, driven people. They're very career-focused, and as a result, they are intense people who don't give up on anything. And yet, when push comes to shove, when all the 3rd act breakdown stuff starts happening, they're both just willing to throw the towel in on their relationship, which to me was incredibly out of character. I think one of the biggest problems for me, and this is a very, very personal issue with it, was the way they completely threw the idea of a long-distance relationship out the window. This may be vaguely spoilery, but I'm going to try my best not to get into the spoiler territory. Basically, one of their main reasons for just going, fuck it, not having a relationship with you, is that it would involve an element of long distance to their relationship, and both of them just go, not doing it, which did not make sense to me for their characters. These are career-driven people. The whole way through, we are told they put their work above literally everything else, maybe apart from their families, and yet when they go into, oh, we would need to live in separate places because of what our current commitments are in terms of work, why wouldn't long distance work perfectly for them? They get to have a relationship and prioritise their careers. For those two individuals, I did not see a reason why long distance wouldn't work. I am very biased. I am someone in a long distance relationship. I have been in a long distance relationship for about 4.5 years now, and of course it's going very well. I just really dislike that it is not treated as an option in a lot of romance stories, and especially in one where, as I say, I am certain it would have worked for these two. And my final quibble with this romance novel, I thought the sex scenes were really, really basic and boring. So yeah, my overall rating for this is like a high 3 stars, because I did very much enjoy it for the first part. My own quibbles with it only really started coming into play in like the latter third of the book. But until that point, I was really, really invested. I was enjoying it so much, and I think that is testified with the fact that I read it in about 2 sittings. One of those being the first 200 pages and then the final part in another sitting. So yeah, wasn't bad. Would definitely still recommend it to people, but it wasn't as perfect as I was expecting it to be, given how highly this book in particular has been talked about, but also with how people talk about Emily Henry as a romance writer. She is given a huge amount of precedent within bookish communities, and so I was just left feeling a little bit let down with some of the features, specifically with the romance she chose to write between Nora and Charlie as individual characters. But I did like them, and I did like their romance until they started being stupid about what to do with their relationship. Yeah, it was a good first book from Rare Birds Books, and I'm definitely not mad to have read it. I'm glad to have experienced some more romance. I'm glad to have read an Emily Henry book. Just wasn't the perfect romance that I was hoping for. But I have my second book on the way. I will check what the blurbs were again, and I will share them with you. So my blurbs for this month were: Book A, Hollywood it girl must struggle to keep her reputation afloat in a white male-dominated world. To do this, she must enlist the help of a millionaire playboy to orchestrate a fake romance to distract the paparazzi. A refreshing spin on the fake dating trope as you know it. And then Book B was fleeing New York after a publicity crisis, a failed playwright tries to start fresh, making a controversial documentary in LA. But is the endless chase for success going to pay off, and at what cost? Witty and insightful, perfect for fans of Fleabag. So I chose Book B on this occasion, not least because I'm pretty sure I know what Book A is. I saw it on the Storygraph as one of their popular this week, but I think it's called How to Fake It in Hollywood. And I have to admit, when I read the blurb for that on Storygraph, I went, ooh, this sounds really exciting. But the blurb that they gave it on Rare Bird Books, if this is indeed the same book, I wasn't nearly as excited by. In contrast with Book B being about, you know, a failed playwright trying to kickstart their career again, that sounded a lot more up my alley than the way they describe millionaire playboys. I'm not saying I would completely discount the first book if it is indeed the one I'm thinking about, but Book B on this occasion was the one that took my interest more, so yeah. Hello, I am back at home once again at a slightly weird angle because I got back from my university town yesterday and it's a 6-hour train ride. I'm very tired. However, I did return home to 2 very nice pieces of book posts. First one was the latest edition of 14 Poems, which I've been subscribed to for 2 years now, I believe. Absolutely love it. Very excited to read the next bunch of poetry. And the other one was my next Rare Bird book order. So I am going to open it and see what they have given me. Oh, fucked up this envelope. Okay, so the bookmark tells me what the title is, and it is We Play Ourselves by Jen Silverman. I am immediately interested because I have not heard of this in the slightest, so very, very interesting. Got a lovely little colour block card again. Lovely little package yet again. Ah, what an interesting cover. Bright yellow with a lemon and a fly on it in a quite, I want to call it like a sci-fi-ish font. It just makes me think of sci-fi. I wasn't expecting a cover as bright as this. For whatever reason, when, you know, describing a book about a failed playwright, my brain immediately went like dark blue, silver, gold kind of colours. So this is very beyond what I was expecting a book about this subject to look like. Right, let's read the blurb. When Cass, a 30-something-year-old queer playwright, receives a prestigious award, it seems as though her career is finally taking off. That is, until she finds herself at the centre of a searing public shaming. Fleeing New York, Cass moves to LA to start anew. Once there, she is pulled into the orbit of her charismatic neighbour, a filmmaker who is making an ethically murky documentary inspired by a group of teenage girls in their underground fight club. But just as Cass begins to dream of a comeback, the past starts to catch up with her and she is forced once more to reckon with her ambition and the chaos it creates. We Play Ourselves is a darkly funny novel about the cost of making art and the art of making enemies. That is a fascinating premise, not gonna lie, that is completely beyond the kind of thing I normally read. Greatly interested in these themes. This sounds absolutely fantastic. I'm very much looking forward to getting to this at some point. It's definitely gone up in my estimated position in my TBR. Yeah, what a fun one. Hello, it is the 22nd of September and this weekend I finished We Play Ourselves by Jen Silverman. It was a really, really good book. It was so much better than I had expected it to be, which I don't know what that says about my expectations for it, but it was just really, really good. I've got notes on my laptop, so I'm just gonna sit here and run through them because it's been a couple of days now and so I don't want to forget anything. So We Play Ourselves by Jen Silverman is all about a playwright named Cass who has finally hit the big time. She's been working in theatre on Broadway for 10 years and has never had any big success until she wins a grant that then gets her noticed, and so a big play of hers gets performed. And she's thrilled. She's finally made it. She's finally schmoozing with people in the industry. It's all going to plan. Until she makes a really bad social faux pas at the premiere of another playwright's play, and suddenly her entire career falls apart in front of her as everyone thinks she is a weirdo for the thing that she did. And this book picks up as she lands in LA to stay with her old college roommate until everything blows over and she can go back to being a successful playwright. However, what this book explores is not her coming back to her career, but actually the things she learns about herself while she's in LA. She ends up involved with a filmmaker named Caroline who's intending to make a documentary about a female fight club, but a lot of things come to light about how much of this is fabricated for the camera and how much of this was authentic and something that Caroline discovered, as well as Cass having to deal with simply the aftermath of what she did. This follows a really, really nice sort of dual timeline where you see through flashbacks what happened with Cass finally hitting the big time and getting everything she dreamed of, and then it all falling apart just as quickly because of a moment of indecision. Well, wasn't indecision, it was poor decision on her behalf. But you see this happen, and at the same time you see where she is now, what she's doing in LA, and the things that she's realising about what it means to be an artist, to be successful, and to be happy with yourself. As far as my expectations for this went, I think because when it was listed on Rare Birds books it was described as perfect for fans of Fleabag, I was expecting that very sparse, gritty, sort of apathetic female writing that we've gotten quite used to, which I'm not a massive fan of. It tends to focus very, very heavily on making light of really devastating subjects, being very acidic and focusing on very, very dislikable female characters, which is great. There's always a place for dislikable characters in fiction, however, I like my characters likeable, and I wasn't thrilled about the idea of reading something that was going to be sort of looking at, you know, how far someone goes to be successful and then ultimately hating them for what they turned out to be. So I was really, really pleasantly surprised with the journey that Cass as a character goes on that ends up being this really sort of warm, life-affirming exploration of what it means to be successful on a very, like, humble human level. I found it really, really nice just witnessing Cass realise that the life she had wasn't necessarily the best for her. Tara Jean Slater, the playwright whose play she made her massive faux pas at the premiere of, is a fantastic character, and I absolutely loved watching the development of Cass's feelings towards her. When you see her talk to Cass and they bond over their playwriting, and specifically that Tara Jean is just as miserable as Cass in a very different way, but that she is just as miserable despite all the success that she's had. It was so fascinating to see the way that Cass dealt with that knowledge as someone who genuinely believed that the failure of her play in the first place, and then Tara Jean's success in the face of that, was something irrevocably terrible about herself. There was just this line so one of the things that Cass does as an act of self-sabotage is when she finds out that Tara Jean Slater is putting out another play that will actually be staged in LA, she decides to go and watch as a way to vindicate herself in some way. She wants to go and she wants it to be terrible because it's all anyone has been able to talk about is this new Tara Jean Slater play, and she really, really hopes it'll be terrible to make her feel less bad about her own failures, and also so that she can sort of resituate herself as the only one who sees how shit Tara Jean Slater really is. But as she sits down in the seat, there was this brilliant, unforgettable line where she also thinks to herself that she really, really wants it to be good, simply because she is going to be sitting in the theatre for several hours and watching a play. She wants to experience a good play. She wants it to be something that really genuinely transforms her and lifts her out of her current place in life. And that really, really hit me as someone who loves theatre and also as someone who has dealt with a lot of perfectionism. The desire both for someone to fail to vindicate your own failure, but also the desire for it to be good simply because good art is good art no matter who is making it, was really, really fascinating, and just those little lines I think are going to stick with me for a really long time. There is also just the idea that talent doesn't matter, which I thought was really interesting, because we don't actually see anything of the play that Cass put on. We don't learn what it was about, we don't learn anything about its content. The only thing we know about is her and the director and the lead actress that Cass has an affair with. But we never know what the play was. We know that everyone thought it was terrible, but we know nothing about it, and it was really, really interesting then to see this comparison with Tara Jean's success. Because very simply, Cass may have been just as talented as Tara Jean, it just wasn't the right time, or that was one bad play, but because she made her mistake, she won't get a second chance. And yet there is still a chance that Cass is good, because especially towards the end of the book, we see her start to feel fulfilled again. I really, really liked that there were so many unlikable characters in this. Like, Cass is undoubtedly unlikable, especially at the beginning, and yet you see such growth and development that it doesn't have that miserable, gritty feeling. I think the one thing that I will bring up that I didn't necessarily agree with, that I did see a lot of people saying about the book, like, there's a good number of quotes on the front of this and on the back talking about how this is a really funny book, that it's hilarious. As funny as it is intellectual, says the front one. I didn't think this was a funny book at all. I did not find myself laughing at all at any of the points that I thought were maybe meant to be funny. And I think that is very simply a me thing, where a lot of the humour that I think it was attempting was making light of the fact that Cass's life has just gone to shit, and I very simply don't find laughing at other people's misfortune funny. But that is the only quibble I have to say with what this book is and what it does, was just that I didn't find it funny. What I did find it was life-affirming, really quietly comforting, and just a thoroughly interesting exploration of success. I really, really enjoyed it. I found it incredibly interesting to read, but I also enjoyed the experience a lot as well. I think on balance, this is a 4-star book for me. It is not 5-star, it was not earth-shattering, but, you know, it's been nearly a week since I finished this, and I've been thinking about Cass consistently. So, yeah. We Play Ourselves by Jen Silverman was 4 stars for me. I will be thinking about it for a long time, and I'm thoroughly, thoroughly glad that it was one of my Rare Birds book options. Hello, it is the 26th of August and I have been emailed to say that it is time to choose my third and final rare bird book. So I thought I would do that on camera. I have not seen the choices yet. September's books. Okay, here we go. Book A. Cast out from the royal court for her lack of beauty and femininity, our heroine is banished to an impoverished abbey and unexpectedly finds new purpose, leading her sisters back to power and glory. It's a badass historical epic with a modern bent. Very interesting. And Book B. Sparks fly for two best-selling authors at a literary party in New York. What no one knows is that they've met before. Steamy, sparkling, and filled with real-life challenges ranging from single parenthood to mental health, race, and grief, this grown-up depiction of modern love packs an emotional punch. Also interesting. I'm intrigued by both of those. I'm not looking for more romance novels right about now. Book Lovers wasn't bad, but in which case, Book A does sound very great. A badass historical epic with a modern bent. Whatever they mean by a modern bent. I guess twist or take. Anyway, point being, Book A sounds very interesting. So long as it's not fantasy. Fantasy is something I could take or leave. I'm hoping it's going to be, magical realism at most, if not pretty much purely historical. But I am going to pick Book A. Hello, it is the 10th of September, the post has just arrived and brought my final rare bird book. So, time to see what I've been given. Ooh, it's all purpley this time. How exciting. So, the bookmark tells me this is Matrix by Lauren Groff. Oh, there we go. Oh! Now that is pretty. It's all gold and blue. I'm a fan of that. That looks lovely. And it's got some very, very promising quotes on the cover. A big number of quotes and from some pretty complimentary people. Born from a long line of female warriors and crusaders and cast out from the royal court, Marie de France is sent to Angleterre to become the prioress of an abbey. Marie wields her strength. Teaching sword fighting and dagger work, she sets a bold new course for the nuns she leads, bringing herself and her sisters into richness and power. Marie de France? Is this based on actual writer Marie de France, whose work I studied in the first year of my degree? Because if so, I'm really quite fucking excited by this. Marie de France was one of the few, Old English writers whose work we read, and I went, this is actually quite cool and exciting. So if this is based on, actual Marie de France, about whom we know very, very little, other than that she was a writer, okay, this is even more interesting than I thought it was going to be. I'm very intrigued by this. Oh, hang on, I've just opened the front and glanced, so they've got, again, more quotes here. And this starts with, visionary leader, queer lover, 12th century writer. And then says the life of Marie de France is triumphantly reimagined. This is about the Marie de France whose work I studied and enjoyed in first year, who was apparently a queer lover as well. Oh, I am excited by this. Okay, yeah. There was me worrying this was probably going to be the one I was least excited for as a premise, and now I'm buzzing about this. This looks so good. Oh, I really hope this lives up to my new expectations, because if so, this is going to be spectacular. Hello, it is the 26th of September, and yesterday I finished reading Matrix by Lauren Groff. This was a pretty good book. I have slightly mixed feelings about it, if I'm honest. I thought it was objectively a very good book, but that I sort of struggled to get into it. This is the story of Marie de France, a member of Queen Eleanor's court who is sent away because essentially she's being a bit too much of a lesbian in a very public, obvious way. And so she is sent to an abbey in England to become the prioress, just as a way to get her out of Eleanor's way, effectively. But the novel then follows approximately 60 years of Marie de France's life as she ascends from prioress to the abbess of the abbey and all the changes she makes to enable it to be a thriving community of strong independent women, or as strong and independent as women could be in the 1100s AD. I think the thing that made it hardest to get into this was the fact that the plot was very linear and it didn't seem to have an overarching message or theme or just real drive, to be honest. Because it just follows Marie's life in such a chronological fashion, it is very much just a recounting of a fictionalized life, and I found it hard therefore to understand why we were following her. Why should I care about her specifically? Additionally, one of the things that I thought would inherently come up a bit more in relation to Marie de France's life was the fact that she was a writer. However, this is brought up within the first maybe 30 pages of the book. She writes her series of Breton lays to Queen Eleanor as a way to try and get her to take her back into the court. But that is pretty much the only major account of her writing at all. Given how little we know of Marie de France, and the one definitive fact that we do obviously know is that she was a writer, I had just expected it to be a bigger factor of this fictional account of her life. It seemed like, you know, maybe a name and some kind of vibe was slapped onto an entirely fictional creation, but again, I wasn't mad about it. I didn't dislike this at all. It was just a slightly odd experience to read, if anything. Broadly speaking, the writing was very pleasant. There was a lot of really interesting use of metaphor. It was very, very nice, very literary, but nothing that stood out in particular to me. Maybe that's just me, once again. The one thing I will say that I really liked was this acknowledgement of women's sexuality throughout the book. Especially for a book about medieval nuns, this explored women's desire and the ways that women navigate relationships with one another in a really, really interesting way, specifically because Marie de France is such a lesbian, and you see her navigate a variety of different relationships with Eleanor of Aquitaine, with various of her nuns, and it was broadly just very interesting. Also, I was not expecting smutty scenes between nuns in this, and yet I got a handful of them. Do with that what you will. But yeah, I thought this was a good book. I had nothing against it. It just wasn't anything particularly special to me. Glad to have read it, glad to have thought some more about Marie de France as a writer, as an individual, and just as sort of a human woman. But I'd say probably like a 3.5 star. Pretty good, but yeah, that's me done with it, basically. So there you go. Those were the 3 books that I got from my Rare Birds mystery book subscription. I thought now I would just talk a little bit about what my experience was of being subscribed for 3 months to Rare Birds books. Overall, I really, really enjoyed it. I think one of the best things about the subscription was the fact that I would never have picked up these 3 books without it. They were all really, really interesting, and I would say generally very, very good quality. I would never have walked into a bookshop and picked up Book Lovers, Matrix, or We Play Ourselves. None of them would have caught my eye, and they would not have been what I chose to spend my money on. So it was a really, really interesting thing to therefore get these books, having judged them not by their cover but by their blurb, and to give them a go and go, actually, yeah, those are really good. Especially We Play Ourselves. You know, it's been a couple of months now since I read it, and it is still on my mind pretty frequently. Of course, you saw throughout the video as well, Rare Birds Books supplies the books to you in a beautiful way. Just the envelopes they send them in are gorgeous. They come wrapped, you get a little postcard, you get a bookmark. In fact, behind this camera is a little shelf unit in my bedroom, and I have put up all my lovely little green postcards. Just a nice bit of abstract art. They're very, very nice. And just the fact that they come with this little sort of brief as to why Rare Birds Books chose it and why they thought it was worth sending out to all their subscribers was a really, really interesting thing, and it was nice again to see that personal touch from the team behind the subscription service too. I would say I have 2 not really negative points but just things to discuss. I didn't use the community feature that they provide, so you can log on to Rare Bird Books to make your selection for the month, and as part of that there is a community section where you can talk about the book that you read for that month. I went on there to make a comment about Book Lovers and I couldn't post the comment, so I just kind of gave up. I do feel like I therefore didn't maybe get the most out of that subscription, given that I could have therefore had that additional element to it. The other thing with the community feature was that I did go on to try and make a comment about Matrix, which was my 3rd and final book, but at that point they had stopped my access to the community area because my subscription had run out, which meant that I effectively lost out on the chance to talk about the 3rd and final book that I got in my subscription because they went, well, you're not subscribed for a 4th month, therefore it stops. Which I feel like was just maybe oversight on the administrator's part, Maybe it's there to make you subscribe for more months, I don't know, but it was a bit of a shame. And the other thing is that I thought it was very interesting that given you are only given 2 books to choose from, and I was subscribed for only 3 months, every single month there was a romance book option. And in fact, in my first month, there were 2 romance books. Not necessarily a bad thing, maybe I just happened to be subscribed for 3 months in which they were very heavy on choosing romance books as an option, but I did think it was quite an interesting choice. Maybe it is because, you know, broadly speaking, women's fiction tends to be quite focused on romance, but I did think it was interesting, especially as someone who, I like romance books every so often, but they are not something I tend to want to stock my shelves with regularly. Not necessarily a bad thing, worth flagging in case that is something you are very much not looking for. Broadly, I thought it was a really, really good subscription service. I very much enjoyed it. I liked the way that they ran it, I liked the way that the books arrived, I liked the 3 books that I got. I am very glad to have read them, and so broadly, I would say this was a very positive experience. I would definitely try a mystery subscription in future because this has been so good, and to be honest, I would very happily get a Rare Birds book subscription again at some point in the future because it was just lovely. I very much enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video about it. I will, of course, link Rare Bird books below in case you want to take a look at them. Not sponsored, in case you couldn't tell. This was a birthday present from my parents that I thought I would get some extra booktube content out of, so I guess really, thank you very much to my parents for getting this for me. It was a fantastic gift idea. Good job, Mum and Dad, and thanks for the YouTube content. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this was an interesting video for you. Feel free to like this video if you did indeed like it, and comment down below if you've ever done a mystery book subscription. Did it work out? Did you enjoy it? Have I convinced you to read any of the 3 books that I was randomly given in this? Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more of me and my bookish content, and I will see you next time.